Okay, so on the last video that I recorded, the box model and CSS positioning, I talk a lot about the box model, but I don't necessarily get into the CSS positioning. And after all, the assignment that this refers to is all about CSS positioning. You should visit the W3 schools and look out the position property. There they'll tell you the different position properties that exist. There's several values that you can use, 5 of them apparently, and let me tell you real quick that we will not be using, at least I won't be using some of them for the assignments. One of them specifically static because it is the default. So everything that I did on my code pen, this is all without saying that it's static. The position is automatically set to that. So by default this happens. So we don't really need to concern too much ourselves too much about static. The ones that we'll be using the most are going to be relative and absolute because they work in conjunction with each other. There's a couple of other values that we could use, fixed and sticky, and these make for really cool effects that I think that I will bring back later in the class. You can see a fixed position here, even if I'm scrolling down. The box, the division element, is fixed, so it doesn't move. Sticky is the kind that, well, I don't have it here, but I'm sure I could visit a page to show you real quick. It also makes for a cool effect. It tells you it's sticky, and if you scroll down, everything scrolls down except the box that is that has the sticky CSS value. That being said, let me get back to the activity that we're working on and talk a little bit about the positions relative and absolute. Going back to my code here for the box that I did the last time, and that gets fairly close to one of the assignments. Let me expand on it a little bit just to show you what's coming up for the rest of the labs. Know one thing that, like I said, relative and absolute can work in conjunction with each other. Relative basically is positioned relative to its normal position. Just kind of strange. Basically, what this means to me is that when you suddenly say, hey, if I go to my code, I have a container, which is that gray box. It holds all the other elements inside. And then I have all the other elements inside. I have the class of container that holds everything. And then I have all the other classes inside: red, green, blue, purple, etc. And they really, all this so far, we are not displaying anything on HTML. All that is here is actually just the declaration of the box, div class equals red for the red box, etc. And then just some text that is there mostly to just hold position. Everything, all the magic is happening inside the CSS, and it will continue to do so. We have manipulated the CSS so as the code reads from top to bottom. It starts out with the container, and then we specify that before we close this division, which actually closes all the way at the end, we're going to open up another box and another and another for a total of 4 boxes, and everything else that we are making change of in this page will happen in CSS. For each one of these things, we are very specific. So what I can do now with the container is assign it a position. And as I said, think of it this way, that the position relative is the one that is going to assign the value to your original box, the one that you want everything to gyrate around. In this case, it's going to be the container. The container is first in line. So if I tell it right away in the CSS that I want the position to be relative, semicolon, not much happens because although actually a lot happened, you just can't see it because we need other elements to start to interact with the relative. What happened basically is that we said here where container appears, we want that to be the new 0 zero coordinates. So everything that happens after the position is declared as relative will relate back to this corner. No longer the 0, 0, that's the whole document. If I were to apply the relative position to the red box, then everything would gyrate around the corner, the upper left most corner. For red, same thing. If it happened in purple, everything would depend on this corner. But we want this box to be the one that declares what's going on. And once we do that, and then everything else can relate back to it through absolute positioning. And it's actually the absolute, I think, is a little bit easier to explain, because if I then tell after the margin to the red box, for example, I'll say that the position should be absolute, semicolon, and it just kind of disappears because absolutely it doesn't know much of what's going on, the red box specifically, because it's still there. It's absolutely relative to the gray box, but it was another box that disappeared because the ground was basically pulled from underneath it. Let me restore, or actually delete the last step so that the purple box comes back. And actually it was the green that disappeared. So like I said, it's a real mess going on right now. But we can work with it now that it's been declared. We just have to work in conjunction with everything else. Since the absolute positioning, I'm basically going to tell the red box that it needs to appear 10 pixels from the left and 10 pixels from the top. I'm going to get rid of the static codes that we were using. This no longer needs to float. It no longer needs a margin. Instead, we need to tell it that now that the position is absolute, that it's got to do something with that information. So we want it to start at 0, 0, and that's just what it's doing right now. I'll say the top should be at 0 and semicolon, and the left margin should be set at 0. So that puts it right next to the box. But now that we have the red absolutely positioned at 0, 0 to its parent, the gray box that has the relative position, the green box is still acting like it's trying to float, so it's in a different position than the red, and that's fine because green goes somewhere else. But now that we see that we can move the red box specifically to 0, 0, let's put it somewhere where we actually want it, which is at 10 and 10. So now the absolute position is declared, and let me specify 10 pixels. Then it moves 10 pixels to the right, and it moves 10 pixels from the top. Now that I've written this code, and I know that similar things need to happen over here, we need to change. We need to make the same changes as I just did with the red box. So the margin, the float can go. The other information stays behind, but then I'm going to paste the position absolute. And now it's saying, that the top is at 10 pixels and the left is at 10 pixels. So this tells me that it's actually on top of the red box. The green box needs to be on the right side, and we want it 10 pixels from the right. So I'll change the left code to right and say from the top 10 pixels, from the right 10 pixels. So now we have our first two boxes that are being drawn specifically exactly where we want them. Absolute values of 10 and 10 from the left for the red, and from the right 10 from the top and 10 from the right. And I'm sure that you can guess what's going to happen to the other two. First, we get rid of the original float and margin code. And then I can add in the top and left, or whatever it needs to happen here. Blue is now needs to be at the bottom left. So we're going to tell it that from the bottom rather than the top, it needs to come up 10 pixels, and from the left it needs to come up 10 pixels. The last box, the purple, paste the position absolute code. This is also going to be moving from the bottom. Remember, the bottom of the gray is the relative position for all of these, and then from the right it will be moving up, or actually moving 10 pixels away from the right. So with new code but using the position tags, we've managed to get the same design that we had before, but the last one, although it's valid and although it'll work in just about anything because it's traditional CSS code, as it were, we want to use the position just to make sure that we have greater control of what we're doing. By that I mean, I'm not going to do the whole thing just here yet. I will do a sample assignment for the next video, but just to give you a preview of what's coming up, just so that you know that these are absolute positions that really do allow you to put it anywhere. And as an example, the red is already here. And what if I wanted to have it all the way up to the top, because I think that's coming up in one of the assignments. I'm going to change the width and height from 230 to 650. And same thing here with the height. So I have a smaller red box, and I'm going to tell this one to just stick to the very top and the very left of the box. And same thing with the green. The width, make it a little bit smaller, or relatively smaller, 50-50. I get the smaller green box, and see how it's getting pulled to the top and the right. Currently at 10 pixels. Change those to 0, and it will slide right on to the corner. And I could do the same thing with these two boxes, and I could actually just start to build other boxes and put other content inside of this box and use all of these multicolor boxes as graphic elements. In the next video, I'm going to pull one of the assignments and show you how to get through with it and work with HTML and CSS windows, and finally copy the code into a file that you can publish to your GitHub page.